Now, this gentleman's been up all night, by the way. So our first guest has been up all night working. He finished his shift at 3:30 in the morning, made his way
Oh,
home,
wow.
and he's been drinking coffee ever since, waiting for us. So, and I said, I was super.
Indian.
I super.
Indian coffee.
I know, right? Have you ever been to
Mm.
India, by the way, Stephen?
No, no,
I've
no.
never been.
Need to go.
I've never been. So I'm so excited to bring on our first guest. And he helped me with the pronunciation because I'm always super sensitive with that. Harshan. Harshan, did I get that right? How are you?
That's correct, Peter. How are you doing?
I'm great. We're
And
getting
thank you for
okay.
inviting me to the show.
Oh, listen, I'm so excited to have you here, and thank you for joining us all the way from Mumbai. So I appreciate that. Stayed up after the shift of working all night, and here you are joining us right now. Listen, so super much respect for you, sir, for being here. I'll leave you with Stephen and your question. Take it away.
Hey, Steven, how are you?
I'm good, my friend. It's Harshan. Is that correct? So I get it
That's
correct.
correct.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for this. What are we going to chat about?
So, Steven, I just want to ask you a question. Might be that you might have been already been asked about this question in the past.
Yeah, but not by
So,
you.
I'm. Uh, so the thing is, I'm currently working in an organization, which is actually a very good company, but it doesn't has a role-based kind of a role as per the title which is provided to the employees. For example,
Mm.
right now I have a title about business process lead, which basically means a team leader. So not necessarily just because I have that title, I'll be actually given that role. So it might be like I'm actually working into work related to an associate instead of handling a team.
Yep.
And same thing also goes on my hierarchy level for our system manager. It's not necessarily he will be actually having a team. He will be still working like a associate. So unless you reach to a managerial level, so basically you don't have much of I mean anything that values your title. So my
Yep.
thing is it worth for an employee in long term until you reach that level to stay in that organization? Or is it better he actually aims for an individual contribution in a separate company or look for change?
Okay, cool. Couple of things. First of all, what you like to do is what you've learnt. What you love to do is who you are. Really, really important. 98% of society have learnt to do what they do. 2% of society, and they were on that picture at the opening monologue about opinion addiction, are just being who they are. So very first thing is you're probably working in an organisational structure where you like it, and some of that like is because there's a time and money combination that gives you lifestyle to whatever degree. Part of your question is, who is it that you really are? Because my first question to you is, what do you want? If you could, we talked about letter of honour. If you could actually describe the type of, and I'm going to answer your question, I'm going to look as if I'm going between Sydney and Mumbai via the long route. But I am going to answer your question. What is it that you want? Because what you've done has gone down into, I know how to do this, but this is why I do it, which is where all your admiration comes into, right? What is it that you actually want? Let's just park the concept about your question of the structure of business and how I might fit in. What is it that you actually want? So if I gave you a blank check and so I gave you a blank check over here, and I gave you a blank canvas over here of the type of job you would want, what would you tell me it is?
So, so being a Czech, now I come from a payroll background, so I would say
Mm.
that's my paycheck, which has been related to bonus. So I can say that.
Yeah, but that's not what your
So
question was. But that was not what your question was.
what I want was I want a role which is, so if I'm going for a managerial kind of role, so I would
Mm.
prefer that I have a team where I can simultaneously learn from them and able to handle them, so I can grow when I go up the ladder, rather than
Yep.
staying on a position where I don't see anything happening and I'm actually just working like an associate.
Okay.
So that's my thing is if I have to work at an associate level, I mean, just like an associate, would it be better I just work as an individual?
One of the things you need to do is get a partition in your mind between what your head is telling you and what your heart's telling you. Because you're interlacing between the two as you talk to me. It's not a criticism, it's an observation. So when I said what you want, you said people and you said handle. In my world, handle means lead. And the nature of the way you ask and the sentiment and the tonality in your voice, I would suspect you're a kind person who actually likes helping people. You also talked, you wanted people. You said you wanted a team. A team is people. People is handle, is lead. People, you want to help them grow. You use the word grow. Growth is development. So I guarantee who you are is about wanting to lead and develop people, to use some of the language that's familiar with what you're doing. Over here, you're sitting in a position. And I would suspect that position you're in right now has a limited amount of lead and a limited amount of development, because you've actually got a cap on what you can do, and it's called your boss, it's called a structure, it's called where you sit in the food chain or where you sit in the corporate structure. So one of the things, when I go back to who you are and lead and develop, and the sentiment and the tonality, was just the way you conducted yourself when you first spoke to Peter, the way you introduced yourself to me. It's in the opening 15 to 20 seconds of someone's dialogue you can understand whether they're heart-driven or head-driven. And as soon as you started speaking to people, Peter, I knew exactly what I was dealing with. But one of the things at the moment, if you're in the corporate world, and this is a challenge for corporate right now, the corporate world had everyone working 9 to 5 in an office. Now all of a sudden everyone's working off-site, and most corporate managers don't know how to handle it, because they don't know how to, where does the position of home working fit? What if I can't see you? How do I know if you're doing any work? So one of the things you need to do in terms of what you want as a position, what type of leadership and development role could you start looking for, if that's what you want? And that looking for might be in your existing position, or looking for might be an external position. And right now, a lot of corporate headspace is how do we lead and develop people? And I'm going to use a very simple example in the context of what's happening with the pandemic. How do we lead and develop people? Because most people are used to managing positional authority. Positional authority defined by a structure that's been around for 20 years. It's a little bit like the education system right now. Everyone knows the way that we're teaching kids is not actually appropriate for what they walk into. But we still have an authority position around this is how we do it. So one of the things that you would want to consider doing, and this goes back to who you are, you like leadership, you like development. One of the things you need to do is start thinking of 2 options to get into some, so that's kind of some clarity on where you're at. I know that's fairly quick because these always are, but here's a couple of things that you can do. You've got some choices that you need to make. First choice is you expand the position where you are now. And that choice is driven by the fact that you want to lead and develop people. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. So one thing you can do, option A, we always do red, so we've got to do reds. We can't use black, and I should never use my hand. A. You need to think of how you can use leadership and development with your existing position, understanding the circumstances that we're in right now. If there was ever an opportunity for you to actually approach about development and leadership because of the changes to how business has been conducted right now, it's right now. The other option that you've got is start reviewing external opportunity. Because guess what? External opportunities are having the exact same problem.
Correct.
It's exact same problem. So leadership and development of people is problematic right now, because most leadership and development in the corporate space is positional. Positional to an existing structure that's never had to deal, and I'm just going to pick on one element, working from home. It's never had to deal with it before. So your leadership and development of people is your number one asset. Your leadership and development of people is your number one message. And your leadership and development of people is your number one opportunity. And that opportunity, and we'll leave it as that, is either to look externally or expand within your existing structure. And this section of the video will be cut out and sent to you in the coming days. And I'm doing this fairly quickly. But one of the things you need to embrace is that I'm a leader and a developer of people. And I understand where you're at right now is you're in the headspace of what you've always been used to. It's part of the reason when you asked me your question, it started in your head and halfway through went to your heart, which is why I wrote up like and learn. As soon as you started speaking, it went from your head to your heart. So one of the things is you need to address the fact that if all you're going to do is speak head-based, not talk about leadership and development, you're just going to get stuck as another one of these managers playing positional structure in a world that doesn't understand it anymore.
Correct.
Does that make sense? So one of the things you need to do, one of the things, and I say this to people quite often, one thing that would be really good for you to do is pick up your phone, put on your headphones, and have a conversation with me. You never have to send it to me, but have a conversation with me and literally, hey Steve, how you doing? I just wanted to talk to you about where I'm at with work, and then explain it. You don't have to send it to me, by the way. Just explain it and have a discussion and make out you're talking with me and drop my name. And you know what, Steve, it may not be like this in Sydney and Australia, but this and talk and talk and talk. And then I want you to listen to yourself talking out of your head, craving for you to be conducting your heart leadership and development. Your level of awareness at the moment is not one or the other, but it's drifting between both. So what I encourage you to do is your homework assignment, your tactical execution, as we call them on the show. I want you to have a conversation with me and record it for the sole purpose. I want you to hear how you talk from your head about position and structure, because you always have, but you actually want to lead and develop people. You want to grow people. I want a team, Steve. And listen to that heartfelt nature. And when you do, you'll have a bunch of words that'll become the language of your opportunity to either find a new role or develop it, amend your existing role or develop a new one. And you get to a point where when I need to speak corporate head authority positioning, I will, but I also need to speak the language of people. Right now and the next 10 years, before COVID came along, corporations were having to deal with the fact that we could actually no longer need a corporate structure. COVID now has amplified and magnified that at lightning speed. So my number one suggestion, have a conversation so you can identify what's in your head, what's over here in your heart, listen back to it for the words, go back to what I said about a letter of honor, listen back for the words, and that'll start helping you to language, creating an opportunity or expanding your opportunity, or putting a CV and a presentation together for people who are seeking exactly the same problem you're experiencing. There's two types of people in life, my friend. I'm going to do this real quick and then I'll throw back to Pete. There are two types of people in life. There are people who are trying to solve things, and there are people who are just trying to sook things. Sook is an Australian expression for people who just whine and people who solve. I need you to become a solver, because you know what? You are. But you need to solve leading with your heart and your head, not solve leading with your head. Because if you stay in your head, all you're ever going to do is play the game of positional authority in a structure that is currently becoming redundant. Peter?
Correct. Yes.
Ow, there's so much unpacked in there. Harshan, I hope you're taking notes, but that's a cool thing about video. We can always go back to it. But I just love the overall theme that I pulled from that, Stephen, is the head and heart idea of leadership versus management.
Yes.
We have people that have titles that shouldn't be leaders, and we have leaders that actually don't have any titles. And it comes back to that head heart way of approaching things. So, Harshan, I hope that makes sense to you, my friend. It certainly is a great question. I think a lot of people in your role these days, people who have to manage people from afar and working from home and that kind of thing.
Down on the board for a
so
second.
This is actually a thing that has been faced by a lot of my colleagues in their organization. So they all have this title, but they are not satisfied because they don't have a team or any kind of a thing which is associated. So when they decide, what is the point of having a title if you're not going to have a team? That's one of the reason I asked this question. So in case anybody of my associates tomorrow asks me, I should be able to address that issue to them.
Yep. But one of the things you need to do is give solutions. So at the moment,
Correct.
heart is leadership, head is management. People are managing by reaction. Leadership is a need. People are needing leaderships to develop, as opposed to following positional authority, following an existing structure, and managing by reaction.
Right.
Part of the reason that management by reaction in the existing corporate structure has been so confounded in the first half of 2020 is because what someone explained to me, the management of everyone working from home, that no one knows how to do it. But there are people who are shining because they've actually developed the heart of leadership which is needed. So when it goes back to that solver and Sook thing that I talk about, one of the things that you want to do is have that conversation, listen back to it, and find the words that when someone says, I don't have a team, I can't. Well, there's two things. If you don't have, go and get it. But you can't go and get unless you know what it is. And one of the things I notice with you is you have a heart for people, you have a heart for leadership, you have a heart for development. It's in need right now. And if you can't find it where you are, go looking for it because it's out there and it's in need. This section of the video will be cut out by the angels, hi girls, and it will be sent to you. So you can watch this again because I know I've gone through this reasonably quickly. But one of the things you need to do is get out of your head, get into your heart, and bring your head of execution behind your heartfelt nature, because people at the moment are desperately looking for heartfelt leadership with structure.
With structure.
Thanks, Pete.
Harshan, I hope.
Thank you.
That was a dig in. We dug in there. Please.
He nailed it.
I know you're staying up late for a long time. Grab some coffee. Stick around if you can.
Yeah, please stay around.
We would love for you to stick around.
Sure, definitely.
We would appreciate that so much. Stephen, I just love the idea of the relationship between leaders and managers, and you talked to that head, heart, all that kind of stuff. I really like that, and I think a lot of people will pull something from that.